Alright, when we start talking about photosynthesis, there's two key parts to photosynthesis. There's light reactions, and then there's the light independent reactions. The light reactions, what we're doing is we're capturing light energy. So in the light reactions, you're capturing the light energy. In the light independent reactions, or the Calvin cycle, what we're doing here is we are fixing carbon, also known as making the glucose. So when we look at this, we're looking at the light reactions primarily today, okay? And the light reactions take place in one part of the chloroplast, and the light independent reactions of the Calvin cycle take place in another part. So if you were to look at the chloroplast, okay, the chloroplast is an organelle that contains its own DNA. It has its own DNA. It has an outer membrane. And it also has an inner membrane, which is part of the thylakoid. Okay? So you have the inner membrane, which is a thylakoid, and then a stack of thylakoids is called a grana. Okay? And the chloroplasm, or the space around here, is called the stroma. Okay, so when we're looking at a chloroplast, this is a chloroplast, has the outer membrane, then it has small little thylakoids inside, which stack up sort of, and they call that a grana. And the space around between the outer membrane and the inner membrane is called the stroma. So this structure here we will call the chloroplast. Okay? As we move on from the chloroplast, we're going to look strictly at the thylakoid. Okay? The thylakoid membrane. Okay? And it's like other membranes. It has proteins embedded in it. It has proteins through it. It also has a phospholipid bilayer. Okay? And if we were to look at it, there's the membrane itself. That's sort of the structures that it has. Okay? And this will be the stroma side. And this will be the inner thylakoid space. So as you're thinking about it, you go back and you see it's right along here. See this line that I've drawn? Right in here? That's that space right there. Okay, so the stroma's on the top, the inner thylakoid space is on the bottom, and this is a membrane. Okay, so it's got the phospholipid bilayer, and then it's got a series of different proteins and things within it. And remember your goal here. What's the goal in the light reactions? The light reactions goal? Is to capture light energy. Okay? And by capturing the light energy, your products here, what you will actually make, your products, the things you make in the light reactions are ATP, NADPH, and oxygen. Okay? So the light reactions, you're going to make NADPH, ATP, and oxygen. The reactants, what you need here to react are water, NADP plus, and ADP and inorganic phosphate. Those are the reactants you need. The products at the end of the light reactions will be ATP, NADPH, and oxygen. That would be inorganic phosphate. So quite often they write it as a PI. So let's go back to the thylakoid membrane. And on the thylakoid membrane, you've got a bunch of things here. This is PS1. This box right here is PS1. Okay? Also known as photosystem 1. Okay? At the far end over here is PS2. Okay, so you have photosystem 1 and you have photosystem 2. There's two photosystems. They're the key light capturers. Okay? Right here is the cytochrome complex. So that would be cytochrome. That's this spot right here. This purple thing right here is your NADP reductase. Okay, so the purple is NADP reductase. This is a proton channel. Okay, so that's a proton channel. And up at the top here is ATP synthase. Now take a look at that. There's a proton channel, so that's a channel protein. ATP synthase, what do you think it does? If it's an ASE, it's an enzyme, what do you think it does? Synthase. It's going to make ATP. So that's where you're making ATP. What do you think NADP reductase does? Not quite breaking apart. Reductase. It's going to reduce NADP. Okay? And when you reduce NADP, what do you think it's going to... What does that mean if it's going to be reduced? It's going to gain an electron, right? And if it's in biology, what will it probably gain? A hydrogen. So if I'm going to go from NADP+, I'm probably going to make NADPH. We're going to start at the beginning at photosystem 1. Okay, so photosystem 1, I would recommend not writing right now. I'd recommend just sort of paying attention, but that's up to you. Light is going to strike photosystem 1. Photosystem 1 is basically the chlorophyll that you were extracting last week. Okay, those are your major pigments. And what happens when photosystem 1 strikes here, it has enough energy that it is going to excite an electron. It's going to make the electron very excited. And so the electron in here gets excited, jumps out, and it gets picked up by this little product here and transfers over to here. Okay, so ferredoxin, which is that one in the middle, grabbed the electron while it was in its excited state, grabbed it, pulled it away, and threw it to NADP reductase. So I've got this electron that has lots of energy and it's been pulled over to NADP reductase. Okay? What did I do to photosystem 1 when I removed the electron? I lost an electron. I oxidized it. Okay? So now photosystem 1 is in an oxidized state. Okay? Photosystem 1 is in an oxidized state. It wants to be in a reduced state. Where is it going to find an electron? One of the cool things is photosystem 2 has another photon of light hitting it, and it excites this electron. And that electron gets really excited, and plastic quinone, which is this little molecule here, grabs the electron, pulls it across to the cytochrome complex. Okay? And then the cytochrome complex has an electron that has lots of energy, and if you think of it kind of in a flirtatious way, it's attracted to hydrogens. Let's say it just wants a proton. It's excited to get a proton. And when we talked earlier on in the semester about water, what happens in water naturally? If I look at water, I know that it'll partially dissociate, right? So at any given time, you will find there are protons floating in the water all throughout. We're in an aqueous environment. Okay? So this electron right here, okay, the electron sitting here, it's got lots of energy. There's a proton sitting out here going, hey, how are you doing? And it's almost like they're trying to ask each other out of prompting. Okay? But the electron is evil. Okay, it's got too much energy. It's like squirrel. Okay, it's just too much going on. So what it does is it invites the hot proton towards it, and when they meet, the proton's all excited. It's going to get asked to go to the dance, but the electron basically just throws the proton into the inside. Kind of mean, but that's what happens. So now the proton got pulled through. That took a little bit of energy. The electron continues its path. Plastocyanin takes it here, and then it comes and lands in photosystem 1 and is now happy. Okay? Ask me questions. What's really cool here is photosystem 2 is now oxidized. It wants to be in the reduced state. The neat thing about this is I'm going to flip ahead 2 and then we'll come back. At photosystem 2, okay, on the one side, there is what happens is called photolysis, or photolysis, whatever you want to say. And a photolysis is 2 photons of light strike 2 water molecules. Okay? And those 2 water molecules are struck on the edge. There's a complex that has manganese sort of right here on the photosystem. I don't really care where exactly it is. But what happens is the water gets blown apart by these 2 photons of light. And what happens in the products are you get 4 protons, 4 electrons, and an oxygen molecule. Okay? So in photolysis, the 2 photons of light hit 2 molecules of water and smash it apart, making 4 electrons, 4 protons, and an oxygen molecule. Okay? So if we go back here, we have the 2 photons of light striking, and the water gets split in here into 4 protons, 4 electrons, and an oxygen molecule. Okay? Think about this for a minute. Where do you think the electrons are going to go? The electrons are going to feed into photosystem 2. Okay, so the electron, you got them in an oxidized state, so those electrons can now feed into photosystem 2. I know there's 4 of them. I'm not worried about the counting right at the moment. What happens to the protons? Well, we're going to just put a bunch of protons here. Okay? And oxygen, it diffuses out. It's now a byproduct. This is where we make oxygen. This is where our oxygen is made. We split water apart. Lysis, splitting, photo, light. We use light to split water. Okay? These protons will want to be on the other side because you have a high concentration of protons on this side compared to that side. So these protons are naturally going to want to cross the membrane. And if you have a proton channel, they are going to come sailing through, no problem. They'll move. Okay? And if you think of it kind of like a dam in a river, what happens for a dam? The water stands behind it, right? You guys know what a hydroelectric dam is? How do you get electricity from a hydroelectric dam? You poke a hole in it. And if you poke a hole in it, there's enough pressure from the water, because it's a high concentration on one side and very low on the other, the water's going to naturally go through, and you spin something around, you're good. The H pluses, as the H pluses come through here, they're going to be attracted over to here, to this electron, which really doesn't have much. And NADP plus comes in, picks up the electron and the proton, and leaves as, whoop, and it leaves as NADPH. Okay? So the proton that came through here gets picked up by NADP plus with the electron and becomes NADPH. Okay? With the protons coming through here, every time a proton goes through, it has enough energy to take the ADP and the inorganic phosphate and finish that reaction. It gives enough energy to create the reaction to make ATP. And so when the H pluses go through, that as they flow by, they knock the ATP off the active site that's been created. It opens up the active site so another ADP and inorganic phosphate can go, and you can make ATP. And ATP is the energy of life. If you want energy, you must create ATP. And that's why cell respiration makes so much of it. Here we've made ATP. We've also made NADPH. And we also made oxygen. That in a nutshell is the light reactions.